Hello! Welcome to Train Signal. This is common storage environments. What's my intent with this course? Really the intent is to kind of level set, bring people up to a common base knowledge of storage. I think in general, people are somewhat intimidated by what goes on behind the scenes in most storage environments. I'm really trying to figure out why, because it's really no more complex than any other portion of an environment. I think the fact is that in general, storage arrays have gotten more stable over the years. So unless you're in a very active environment and you're constantly divvying out storage to hosts and things of that nature, you're just not in the interface so much as to be comfortable with it, right? And especially since virtualization has really taken a foothold in data centers nowadays, is that you'll carve out a couple huge LUNs, maybe a couple terabytes, you'll stick it out there, and now the individual app owners or whoever's managing the virtual environment doesn't have to come to you every time they bring up a server. They just deploy it onto this big data store, and away they go. So it's usually you're in the interface, or you're usually exploring the interface for the storage array itself every couple weeks, maybe every month, depending on the size and the dynamic nature of your data center. So not accessing that environment as much as maybe you would in other aspects of your environment, that intimidates people. So I'd like to, with this course, just kind of break it down into nice small tidbits all the way from high level, which is where we'll start in this lesson, and then we'll move into a little more granularity in some of the other lessons. But what other things I would like you to take from this is that there is a nice foundational certification you can take from EMC. It'll get you the Storage Associate cert. But the breadth of knowledge that you have to know for that certification itself goes way beyond this video series. This is simply supplemental to your studies when it comes to that certification. And hopefully at the end I'll be able to name a couple resources that I think would really help you out if you are moving toward the Storage Associate certification with EMC. That's in particular, it's the EMC ISA Storage Associate certification. If you're moving that direction, I'll give you some links at the end, some documentation and books and things you should read to really help yourself prepare for that certification. But let me start from the beginning. So the three core in most storage environments are simply hosts, switches, and storage arrays. Okay, so starting from the top down, host I think is something everybody that works and lives and breathes in a data center nowadays, you understand what a host is. Now, the host can take on a couple different identities, right? They can be rack servers, they can be physical hosts, they can be blade servers, they could be virtual hosts. So those are kind of the four elements of what a host could be. In this graphic, this is representative of a physical host. So in that physical host, you have an OS that is running on it. You probably have an application or maybe two. You have CPU, you have physical CPUs in it, you have memory, you have some I/O modules, HBAs, host bus adapters, and these adapters attach to switches, and then those switches attach to your backend array. And that's what's represented here in this graphic. The switches, which are the middleman between your host and your storage arrays, are either IP based or fiber channel based. Now let's take fiber channel over Ethernet out of the equation. We'll just say in most storage environments they're either going to be IP based or they're going to be fiber channel based. Okay, that's represented with that middle tier there. Then at the very end you have your storage array. So this could be any array. In regards to this picture, let's just say it's an EMC VNX, right? And with that we have our two SPs, our storage processors, and then we have a bunch of disks on the back end. Very simple in nature. You have your host, switches, and storage arrays, your host attached to your switches, and then via the magic of zoning, you're zoning your host to your storage array, and voila. They have storage attached, you put a file system on it, and away you go. And that's how most storage environments actually operate. It's really not that complex. There are a lot of things that you can do in this storage environment. Copying of data, replicating data, snapping data, all kinds of functionality and features that you can do across the SAN switches, across the arrays, and even across the hosts themselves. This course will not go deep into the host and switch side. Certainly the array side is where we'll focus on. Top level, right? What's the top level in that three-core solution in most storage environments? It's our host, formerly known nowadays as compute. Right? Compute really encompasses the processing power, the logic, and the memory that's capable on that host itself. Now, these hosts can be, as I mentioned before, both physical and virtual. You can have both distinctions. You can have rack and you can have blade servers, and we'll go over some of those distinctions here in the later slides. Switches, I like to call the conduit or highway between your host and where your data lives. All right, so it really is the middleman. It is what your hosts are accessing first before they hit the backend storage. Now, your host doesn't need to go through a switch. I didn't mean to imply that earlier. They could directly attach to a storage array itself, but you can imagine that the scale out capabilities of that storage array are going to be a lot more limited if you're locking some of those front end ports to an individual host. So the switches give you the ability to scale out. You can have mass fan out ratios from a switch perspective because it's able to provide that. You're able to zone many hosts to a single storage array. If you were physically attaching each host to a storage array, well, that wouldn't be very scalable, wouldn't be very efficient. You'd only be able to scale to maybe 10 hosts, depending on the size of the array, maybe 20 hosts. It was a larger, more enterprise array. So really, the switches give you the scalability that you're looking for in your environment. Storage arrays. This is where your data lives. It may still be the mantra of EMC. They've always had that tagline, where your data lives. And it's very true. This is where your data lives. EMC arrays support the majority of data centers out there, if I must say so. And I have no credible evidence of that, but they are one of the largest storage providers in the world as far as physical hardware. In the instance of VNX, it is a physical array itself, and you can kind of see the different models here, all the way from the 5100 on the left up to the 7500 on the right, the 2-bay 7500. They are physical in nature, but you can have virtual storage arrays as well. You're seeing this enter the market now. You're seeing things such as distributed DAS, where you can sort of simulate storage arrays and the capabilities that they provide all in software. And you're pulling together resources that exist across multiple hosts as opposed to a big monolithic array that draws mass amount of power and cooling and all this stuff in your data center. Now you can distribute that across your hosts. So you're seeing the storage industry change in that sense. People are still very much married to their storage arrays. I think they like having that centralized array where it's able to provide 5 nines or however many nines of availability. You're able to do everything from one central point as opposed to a distributed nature. But things are changing, so we'll see where this develops.